This is the kind of speed the Chancellor wants from the UK economy. She made her big pitch with a raft of proposals, including Heathrow's third runway. After the backlash to her tax rises and the bond market snapping at her heels, the Chancellor defended her record and told business leaders that she wanted to go further faster. Her growth message is one you may have spotted before.
Well, growth is the number one mission of this Labour government. Growth is the number one mission of this new Labour government. It's growth, 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 economic growth.
The problem is there hasn't been any growth. Since the election, the numbers have been bruising. June and July backwards, August a bit better, but then September, October, November are basically flat.
Do we need to go further and faster in making working people better off? Absolutely we do, and that is what the announcements of today are about. But we've already made progress in the first 6 months. There is more to do to achieve our potential as a country, and I'm determined to be the Chancellor that turns around our economy's performance.
Are you still ambitious enough to deliver, to match the Blair-Brown years?
It's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor performance in just 6 months, but we have already started.
Growth in the last 14 years has been woeful. You have to go back all the way to Jane Austen's England to match a period where living standards have grown so poorly. And in the last 6 months, business confidence has cratered, with many companies complaining it's the national insurance tax rises from the budget that have stalled growth.
So I had to take a number of difficult decisions on spending, on welfare and tax to put our public finances on a firm footing.
You don't regret them?
No, I don't, and let me tell you why. Because if I hadn't have made those choices, we would have been at risk of the instability, the volatility that we experienced under Liz Truss when she was Prime Minister. I've now wiped the slate clean.
You say you've got the fight, but how many people are you willing to fight? Are you willing to fight your party, the Cabinet, the London Mayor?
You're not going to get growth without fighting for it. The easiest decision on all of these investments is to say no, because someone will be upset. The problem is if you always say no to new infrastructure, we'll be in the same position at the end of this Parliament that we were at the beginning, where growth flatlines and living standards decline and we don't have the money to invest in our public services.
Are you going to show this kind of grit, though, when people chain themselves to the rails at Heathrow?
We've got to get things done. This government has got a mandate to grow the economy.
Expansion at Heathrow has been a political poison chalice for decades, with campaigners hostile to the noise and the profound impact on climate change. The Chancellor's gung-ho enthusiasm stands in contrast with the past objections of many in the Cabinet, including the Prime Minister. But it's not just the environment. 10 years ago, this project was costed at £14 billion. Today, the Heathrow boss accepts the price has gone up by multiple billions.
This is a project that will benefit all of the UK and typically, and that's normal for airports, the regions around the airport, so all of the UK will benefit, and much of that, more than 50% of the benefit, goes to areas outside of London. This is investment by private investors going into the UK, billions of pounds being ploughed in to the British supply chain over the next years. So no, this will bring pounds into the UK, not the other way around.
And Thomas, those investors, though, they're going to want some of those pounds back. Will that be passed on to consumers?
But there's no other way. Of course, travellers pay within their ticket the cost of travelling, plus returns to airlines and everybody else involved. That's the same for an airport. That's no change. That's how business works. That's how when you go to the supermarket also get their investments and their cost returned, plus hopefully for them a return for the owners of the company.
So is it all worth it?
Now, the question that this government needs to answer is how leisure passenger travel is actually useful for our economy.
But the Heathrow boss says that companies are crying out for a third runway.
I think it's quite likely that airport-owning companies are crying out for a third runway. In her speech, the Chancellor said that actually this is the best time to be doing it, and I don't understand how that's been arrived at. While a few years ago companies were reliant on this type of connectivity, they aren't now. We need infrastructure that builds for this future, for the new type of economy that we're building for, and this is an outdated piece of infrastructure.
The projects outlined today stretch from rail projects for an Oxford-Cambridge Silicon Valley to money for a housing development project in Manchester's Old Trafford. But does it add up to a coherent economic theory?
What I would beg politicians to do is not do what we did with HS2, which is engage in an enormous amount of spending and then at the very last minute decide that a railway station that was going to, a track that was going to go from Euston to Manchester and Leeds would now go from Birmingham to Old Oak Common between Wormwood Scrubs and Car Giant. That's not the outcome that you want, so you do need to follow through, and we don't want Labour to announce a series of really big projects and then have them all cancelled by the next government.
But the Chancellor's tests will come sooner. In March, the OBR will deliver its verdict on growth, and 3 months later, her nerve will be tested again on departmental spending. Today may have won round some business leaders, but the Chancellor's economic choices remain under scrutiny.
So how did the big speech go down in Westminster? Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is there.
It was no accident that Heathrow was the most eye-catching element of this speech, and, as you heard in Helia's report, how after growth, the word fight was the one you heard on a word check with Rachel Reeves throughout the day most often. She's trying to convince the business community that she's ready to fight those environmental groups, those sections of the Labour Party that are passionately opposed to Heathrow, and that totemic project will prove to them that she really is serious about all the other elements of her growth plan. There are, I have to tell you, some elements in the Labour Party tonight that I've been talking to, long-standing opponents of Heathrow third runway, who think some of this is a bit performative, that actually we may never get to the point where this long-delayed project ever comes to fruition. Why is Rachel Reeves, though, feeling that she has to send out these messages? I think it's because she's aware that business feel that some of her early efforts in policy at the beginning of this government were anti-growth, the national insurance rise, workers' rights. And they also felt, she's quite clear about this, people around her say this, that they felt that some of the rhetoric around the beginning of this government wasn't exactly growth-minded. It wasn't very optimistic. She was talking about the black hole that she always put it, and Keir Starmer put it, was left by the last regime. She's now trying to talk about a bright horizon. Keir Starmer, incidentally, couldn't quite move to the new script at Prime Minister's Questions today. He talked about how the Tories completely destroyed the economy. I'm sure he'll get the hang of the new script. He's just not quite there yet. The danger with all this policy is that resistance to it can be instant, but actually getting the benefits of it, well, that can be much more long-term.
Thanks, Gary. Well, earlier I spoke to the Ecotricity founder and Labour donor, Dale Vince, who's against building a third runway at Heathrow, and the chairman of S4 Capital, Martin Sorrell, who is in favour of it. And I started by asking Dale Vince why he's against.
Well, I think the extent to which it will give us growth is highly questionable, according to even some of the official analysis of what it might bring. It ranges from plus 3 billion to minus 2 billion or something like that net to the economy. It's going to take 10 years to build. It's going to cost a lot of money. It will increase air pollution. It will increase noise and, of course, carbon emissions. And I think there are just far better, faster, cleaner ways for us to get the growth that we should have.
Martin Sorrell, why is it a good idea?
Well, I think we need a plan around hardware, software, education, talent, and this is part of that plan. It will cause issues, but in the long term, I think will add to the productivity of the country, the productivity of the people, and stimulate inward investment and confidence in the country, which we sorely need. You can't have growth without sacrificing some things. I mean, we have to make a choice. A country that grows, or do we want a country that flatlines?
Dale?
Yeah, well, look, business flights have flatlined. They peaked 20 years ago, so this is not about increasing those. Already 3 times as many tourists leave our country to spend their money abroad than come in from abroad. This won't help that. There'll be another 250,000 flights across above our capital, exposing 300,000 people to overflying that aren't exposed to it right now. And the economic gains, such as they are, will fall mainly to the shareholders of Heathrow Airport, many of whom are domiciled for tax abroad. This may create economic growth, but it won't benefit people in this country.
Well, economic growth does benefit people in the country. I mean, it will benefit other people too, but we've got to make some choices. Either we we want to be comfortable, more comfortable in the future, or less comfortable in the future. And if we want the country to grow, we have to invest in infrastructure, not just a third runway at Heathrow, it's other airports and other developments. It's industrial progress, it's investment progress. And sure, there will have to be some trade-offs, but the alternative is, I think, further industrial and economic gloom. If you want that, and we make a choice for that, so be it.
The government does, point out this is some way off. There are increases in efficiency in the kind of fuel planes are using. There's development of electric aircraft. Things are changing. I mean, might it not be possible that this is sustainable? And if it's all done within the carbon budget anyway, why does it matter?
Well, that would be great if it was true. Firstly, I reject Martin's false choice between stagnation and a third runway. That's not a real choice at all. We can have growth. The green economy grew 9% last year compared to the general economy, which grew 0.1%. So the massive opportunities are in the green economy. I am aware of hydrogen electric planes. I've started an airline called EcoJet, world's first electric airline. I know where the technology is. I know how long it's going to take to come to pass. So the idea that we can green up flying to compensate for this 50% increase in traffic from Heathrow is bonkers.
There's been a lot of talk of animal spirits and unleashing animal spirits in the economy, and that new runways are part of all that. I mean, do you buy that that green lighting a third runway somehow makes people feel more buoyant?
Well, the Chancellor herself drew attention to the fact that President Trump takes a slightly more optimistic attitude towards the growth and development of the economy, and that we should do the same. To isolate the third runway is the wrong thing to do. It is part of an overall program, an overall planning program, a program around capital markets, around financial services, about the planning function itself, around AI, around bringing talented people to the country. The world is a much more mobile and fluid place, and we have to choose post-Brexit whether we want this country to be a foundation for growth and development and reap that benefit, or continue in the decline. In relation to America, the gap is widening and broadening.
I mean, Dale Vince, if your side wins, and instead you see expansion at Schiphol or Paris or somewhere else in Europe, those carbon emissions are still going into the atmosphere, aren't they? What do we gain overall?
Well, again, I say that's a false choice from Martin. It's not about choosing decline or a third runway. The package announced today, 150 infrastructure projects going ahead, the Silicon Valley, all that kind of stuff. I'm not against that. I'm against the third runway. Will Schiphol Airport expand? I don't know. But if they do and they become the hub for other people to stop for a couple of hours and then travel to another country, leaving no economic benefit, or if they become the airport where Dutch people leave their country to spend their money abroad, then I say they've got the negative aspects that we've avoided over Heathrow.
Last word, Martin Sorrell?
Well, infrastructure, hard and soft, is a key part of any growth plan, whether you're a company or a country. Third runway at Heathrow, along with other developments around the airline industry and transport, are critically important. Reject it, we'll take the consequences. But let's be quite clear that there will be consequences.
Feels like this argument's got a long way to go. So Martin Sorrell, Dale Vince, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.